Good morning. Today we have another meeting organized by the School of Advanced Studies in Cultures, Politics and Democracy. And we have the opportunity to have with us Professor Ricardo Javier Gamboa Valenzuela. Thank you very much, Professor. He is full professor of political science at the University of Chile. And we request to you, Professor, to introduce us the political system in Chile. So the first question that I have for you is, which is the political system and also the democratic system in your country?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this interview at Unitelma. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And regarding your first question, I would say, so Chile has a, compared to the other Latin American countries, a long history of democratic rule. As you probably know, we had a coup d'etat in 1973, and then we returned to democracy in 1990. Since then, we have had a long period of democracy, uninterrupted democracy, with the elections are held normally, and it's a political system that is characterized as a presidential system, as we always have had. So we have never tried to have another
every 4 years?
Every 4 years we have elections, presidential elections, which are concurrent with the parliamentary elections.
In the same time?
At the same time, yes.
Perfect.
But in the case of both, we have a presidential system with a legislature compounded by two chambers, Senate and Chamber of Deputies. Chamber of Deputies have 155 deputies, and Senate 50 members. So the Chilean bicameralism is quite symmetrical in the sense that both chambers have the same legislative powers. Regarding our party system, we have experimented some changes in the last time. If you think at the beginning of the transition of democracy, the 90s, we had a political system compounded by two main coalitions. The Concertación de Partidos por la Democracia, who was composed by members, the traditional left, socialist and communist social party, and a new social democratic party called Partido por la Democracia, and the Christian Democrats. And on the right, we had another coalition compounded by the parties which supported the dictatorship of Pinochet, Renovación Nacional and UDI. This party system worked in a pretty good way till, I would say, the mid-20s. When 2005, 2006, I would say that we entered into a way of dismantling or deteriorating the party system, in the sense that the party's law commenced to lose attachment with people, and so the organizations of parties.
A lack of representation.
Lack of representation, which not also you saw in the parties, but also regarding the issue of participation. Participation declined
really?
across the time
participation to the elections.
Participation to the elections. So at the beginning, which is not usual, but at the beginning, I mean 89 and 90, yes, we had a participation about 80-85% of the people, voting aging people.
Yeah. And now?
And then we descended to 46, 44, but in the last 2 years, after the introduction of a new rule of mandatory vote, and in the context of the constitutional discussion, which topic that we will talk about, then grew exponentially. We grew a lot in the last elections.
But
back to 83-85% of the.
Okay. But because there was a new law that say that you have the duty to vote.
Yes, you have. It's mandatory to vote. If you don't vote, you get a fine. Yes,
I don't know if this is the right way to implement the participation.
Maybe not. There is a lot of discussion about it, but we had the same rule from 90 to 2012. But even though there was a threat of finding people without the people who don't vote, the participation went down.
Oh, okay.
The issue was that there was a rule that you will be fined if you don't vote, but in practice, nobody did nothing about pursuing people to.
And what about especially the political party system now? Because, for example, in Italy we have a multi-party system, but at least three different coalitions, on the right, the left, and another coalition on the center, I don't know. But inside the coalition we have a lot of parties, and this creates a continuous situation of for the government not very positive, no? So which is the situation there?
Okay, perfect. So as I mentioned, the party system has experienced a long transformation, deep transformations in the last years. Since at the beginning of the return to the democracy, we have had a political system composed by more or less six parties, which working in two very clear and defining and cohesive coalitions.
Very good.
Yeah, but I would say in the last 10 years.
Sorry if I disturb you again, but and which was the electoral system? It was a majoritarian
for parliamentary elections.
Yes.
For parliamentary elections, we had the so-called binomial system, which is a PR system, but with the magnitude of 2 for every district.
Okay.
Both in Senate and in Chamber. Okay? But I would say since 2010, the party system began to experience big transformations. First of all, from the left side of the political system, new groups from the left began to grow. So especially new groups of young people who have a new discourse of criticizing all the work that the concertation governments have done in the last 30 years. They claim to big reforms must be needed. The neoliberal system which characterizes the Chilean economy should be replaced by a new, more social democratic arrangement or something like that. Okay, so and from the left, it happened that already in 2015 or 2017, but even more 2021, the last parliamentary election, these new parties in the left grew a lot of support in the society among about 20%, plus the Communist Party, 7%, more or less. This is the new coalition. It's called Apruebo Dignidad, but the new leftist parties plus the new left-oriented parties, it's called Frente Amplio. It's like Campo Largo.
Yes,
no, no, Campo Largo,
but the leader of the Italian Five Stars movement say that it's not Campo Largo but Campo Giusto, no? Fair. I don't know.
It's a broad front coalition from the left. That's the success of these new parties from the left caused a lot of problems inside the traditional center-left parties, which lost a lot of support among the society, and these, especially the Christian Democrats, who used to be the biggest party in the 90s, exploded and still exists, but there are many different groups have left the party, and in that sense, what happened that in the center-left sector, you have two groups of parties. The new left parties, Frente Amplio, which who also act with the Communist Party, and they are the main support of the government, and the former center-left party, very weak now, Socialist Party and
they are the old historical parties.
So what happens is that the historical parties of the center-left collapsed. In the right, there is another phenomenon. During the 90s, the most important parties were Renovación Nacional and UDI, which are still strong enough, 10%, 12%, but a new party emerged from that party, representing a more, let's say, conservative vision, and with a very strong leader who, in the last presidential election, got the first place in the first round, and he lost the second round against the current president Boric.
Well, Ricardo,
so in that sense, I would say we are experiencing a lack of big transformation of the party system.
It's not very different from the Italian political party. Probably there is a common value, I don't know, Mediterranean or Latin blood in our in our body. Well, but it is very interesting. Note that in the last 3 or 4 years in Chile, yes, for 2 times the government tried to change the constitution, no? And the people at least decided to maintain the same system. In the first case, there was a tentative to probably to change according to a left vision of the world. In the second case, to a right vision, and then people decide to stop this. What is your point of view about this? Why it's so difficult? For 2 questions. First, is it so important to change the constitution? And secondly, why it is so difficult to change in Chile the constitution?
Difficult questions. Okay,
I know.
The first one is easier. According to my view, so maybe I am in a minority in Chile. The social outbursts of 2019 showed that Chilean political system had deep and important problems who should be should be solved. Okay? The left interpreted the social outbursts as a huge demand for changing everything, the economic system, the pension system, and everything, the rules of our democracy. It's important to say, no group in this whole process has claimed that democracy should be changed. Okay. No. It's a discussion that's important because in the 70s it was not the same. Okay, but in this context, my view is that the social outbursts showed that the people, mainly most of people. So the core of the demand of the Chilean public was improvement in the material conditions of the Chilean people.
Okay. And is it necessary to change the constitution?
It's not necessary to change the constitution. I mean, but what happened?
Especially if the constitution it is a constitution of a democratic state. There are also
but many claim that because it was enacted during the Pinochet times. So it has been subject of a lot of changes of reform. Has more than 65 reforms since 1980. So it's not that the current constitution is very different from the original one.
But why it was not possible to change in this way the constitution?
To set a new constitution.
Yes.
Because during the process, the current constitution was object of very important reforms. But if you want, we'll talk about that. So what happened? I would say that there are different questions because the 2 failures are different. In some sense of it, I would say the first one, when this process led by the left who won a huge majority in the Constitutional Convention, I think they made the mistake that I mentioned. So they made a wrong lecture, you say, a wrong interpretation of the social outbursts. People wanted better pensions, better education system, better health, a better health system, but not a transformation of the capitalist
Economical
Chilean
system, yeah.
And also, they were not about they were not supporters, or they didn't care about the demands of very specific groups that wasn't included in the constitution,
Yeah.
like the indigenous peoples.
Minority
This
groups.
discourse, please do not get me wrong, but this question of parity of rule with women and men, for the people, for some sector, a very elitist sector, it's important, but for the bunch,
The proposal was probably
yes,
to disrupt.
Yeah, yes, but it was a proposal, I think, that committed that had two main problems. First, it included mainly the demands of small groups that didn't interpret the will of the majority, and second, didn't focus on the main problems that the people were demanding. So, in that sense, the people didn't see the new proposal as a solution for their problems.
Yeah.
Because it is not.
Yeah.
It
But after also, 2 years?
Yeah, but let me mention another thing. But also, no, sorry, I forgot it.
Sorry, because I...
no, sorry. But it's not, so it's, the failure of the first process, I would say, is not only a problem of the text of the Constitution. It was also a problem that the government, who supported strongly and mixed into participated enthusiastically in the process, was not popular.
So was a vote also on the government.
It was
against
the government and against the...
It's the same history that happened in Italy when,
it's politics.
In France with the proposal made by
Brexit
de Gaulle.
Is the same, I think.
Brexit, yes, it's a vote against the politics.
It's against
the
government.
The
not politics, I would say.
The government, that government.
Sorry,
And in the because after 2 years there was another tentative to change the constitution, to adopt a new constitution proposed by the right parties, and the people said the same. No, we want to maintain the same constitution. Why, in this case? The same reasons, the same kind of vision of people that prefer...
I would say it was the same in the sense, but there are some differences. I don't know why they agreed to set another constitutional reform process. I don't know why, because there was an election for the government. The election was a disaster.
So, yes.
Yeah, and the right and the new far right in that sense, it's not a fascist.
It's not fascist.
It's not fascist.
It's important to underline.
It's still
democratic right.
It's democratic conservative right, led by José Antonio Cast. They grew the majority, and even they had a veto power. Because they had more than 35% of the members of the parliament. The quorum for approving was 60. They had more than 40 members of the. Okay, and the right had the whole together the parties of the right had the more than 60% of the members, and they could write the new proposal by themselves. And what happened? For the right, I don't know why. Think one thing first. They never wanted a new constitution, and the best option was always the current constitution. So if they lose, not a problem. We have the constitution which we want. So it's, and then they pursued, or they wrote a text which is, so when far in things like not introducing any of the feminist demands. They try to change the rules about abortion.
Ah, okay.
They introduce
So it was
the rules
totally
about abortion is not a free abortion in Chile. No.
No,
We have 3 cases in which abortion is
Legal.
is not sanctioned in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And introduces some very particular norms regarding tax or housing tax or something like that. And in some sense, it created a context of which, so they say the right is trying to set a new arrangement which is much more conservative that we have. In that sense, the people also said, so this is not so good, better the things that
Yeah.
we have. But the current constitution is not that different from the from the proposal of the.
But
of
probably
the,
people-
But it's also, but in the sense, so it was against the text, but maybe it was also against caste.
Yeah.
The leader of the Republican Party, which is this conservative far right in a sense of.
So it was another vote
Yes, against
on the government
yes.
and on the.
Many people interpreted that in Chile the problem is that whatever the elite proposed to the people is going to be
Yeah.
rejected.
React. Well, it's very interesting, Ricardo, because now in Italy we have another proposal on the for the changement of the form of government. You know,
Yes, it's very
premierato.
interesting. Yes.
So we will see if this proposal will have a referendum, and if the people decide to vote on the proposal or on the
again,
government, like
or-
the last time. The last time,
Yes.
several years ago, the former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi proposed a very complex reform of the Italian constitution, and they strongly support his reform, and the people voted against the reform, probably because they was against
With
the Prime Minister. And in fact, after the referendum on the constitutional reform, the Prime Minister decided to resign because it was a vote on him. So this is the risk of the personalization also of the constitutional
But I
reform.
think in politics, always when a decision is submitted
On
to the
people.
people,
Yeah.
they only don't think in the mother.
Because especially they are very technical
Yes.
issues, and people doesn't care
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this. So I agree with you. But you are an expert on lobby. You coordinate different research projects on this topic. You wrote a lot on the lobby in Chile. So my second question, that is not very a second question, but
Perfect.
but the second issue that I want to discuss with you is about the lobby.
Perfect.
Is there in Chile a legislation on this phenomenon, and which is the role of lobby in the public political process, and in which way the lobbying activity impact on public policies?
Wow.
There are
huge questions.
and we have not 2 hours to reply to
no,
this. but-
perfect. Okay. One thing first, legislation on lobby. So since 2014, we reached an agreement on a lobby legislation. So after more
A
than
long debate.
10 years discussing about it, we reached an agreement. And the main characteristic of this law is that it is a kind of register of the meetings between authorities, people who take decisions among different public policies and so on, and people of of the civil society, paid or not. Okay.
Paid.
Yes, because our law makes a distinction between the professional lobbies and the social organizations or groups that
NGO,
which are not that paid for that, but go to have meetings with authorities in order to get a decision for favoring
And this register is public, so
this register is public.
everybody can check, can see,
Yes,
can read.
of course, it's public there is a website, infolobby.cl, and in that sense, if you want me to make a kind of evaluation of that, the lobby legislation is being a register. It's a kind of transparency law more than a regulation of the lobby activity. So the first criticism is, of course, that it's useful, but not so much. Because for what? Only because we can know who the authorities meet with, and that's it. Maybe a mention of the kind of the topic of the conversation or not. In that sense, it doesn't regulate. It's a register, but it doesn't regulate the lobby activity. As many.
For example, if you lobby, you have not to register yourself in a public register. You have to register only the meeting that you have.
Yes, but there is a registration of the people who want to lobby.
There is a register?
Yeah.
Okay, so
you
cannot lobby the government without registering. Okay.
So if you are, for example, you are represent an NGO, and you want a meeting with the boss of or the Minister of Environment. So you have to register, and then you have to say if you go by yourself or you're going representing somebody else, if you are paid or not. Or, but it's that. So that's all.
But then I have to declare the meeting that I have with the public decision maker.
Yes. Okay. But this is very interesting. I don't know if we have time, but in the last 2 months, a scandal exploded because it was known that very known professional lobbyists organized meetings in his home where ministers were invited and also important entrepreneurs. And nobody registered those.
But because it was organized in a private home?
No, it's not about the place.
So this is a violation.
No, because they said, the minister said.
The minister said?
Nobody believes that in those meetings, they only talked about many things, but they didn't receive any input or request from.
No. Wow. Yeah.
So it's unbelievable.
Yes, it is unbelievable. So especially because it's a private interest at a meeting with a minister.
So it's impossible to say
to
that
about
a meeting
soccer,
between
about football. No, it's not credible. Well, and so you say you have not a very positive evaluation.
The people in general have a not very positive evaluation because the sanction system.
Sanction system.
There is no. So, according to a friend who knows better than me, the sanction system doesn't work so good because being the norm so loose.
But for example,
there sanctions have not been imposed since a long time. So.
After the.
And in that case,
case, what happened? In the case that you described before, what happened?
The controller said was a lobby. Because
was a lobby.
It is not. We have no reason to believe that lobby actions took place in that meetings.
So it was a lobby.
No, it was a meeting,
but not for lobbying.
Not for lobby, because lobby, what do you have to report is that lobby actions, and lobby actions lobby actions are defined as meetings where private persons request something from the authority. According to the controller, in those meetings, it is not
if you have
Proven.
not the proof
Without
of
the
this
proof-
request,
Okay.
there is not. Wonderful.
Well,
So,
in that sense-
trust me, Ricardo, your system is very similar to the Italian one. Because normally, when the parliament in Italy approve a law, the day after, they think in which way they do not apply the law. No, they can think, we are creativity peoples, both. So,
the impact?
yes, and which is, apart this law, which is the impact of lobbying activity on public decision
It's
system?
difficult to measure.
There is no indicator.
There is no indicator, and also you have lobby information, but it's not
Very-
full information.
yeah.
It's very, and it's always going to be that way. So it's a problem without solution from the, let's say, political science point of view, which is
Yeah.
not maybe the most important in that sense. But having no measures, we tried once to make measures in order to evaluate who kind of interest is more powerful. In the sense, for example, we took the traditional differentiation or traditional distinction between business interests and labor interests, civil society interests, and professional associations interests. And according to a preference attainment, the business, so all the people say the business here rule. They obtain whatever they want. But in that sense, the few evidence we have doesn't do not give a clear evidence of which interests are more important. But you have also casuistic evidence that in many senses very important interests, economic or other, have been important in order to but a well done evaluation of the impact is still lacking.
Okay. Well, yes, I think that in every...
Casuistic evidence there is, but
the complex is
the
not
complex
possible
is-
to...
yeah.
Well, I have to say to you that, for example, in Italy, we have not a lobbying regulation, we have not a register of lobbyists, and we have not a register of the meeting between lobbyists. And so, for me, the Chile situation is wonderful because we have nothing.
At least we have a register.
So for this reason, it's impossible. It's important to compare because it depends on the initial situation. So,
But I would say, in any case, I would say that lobby has an impact, of course. And also, not only in the decision-making process regarding when a new norm is going to be enacted, but also on the implementation system. That's interesting.
After the approval of the law.
Enacting norms, you have to implement the norms. And it's interesting. In the case of Chile, for this, the registration, the information is useful. 46% of the meetings between authorities and lobbyists are about implementation of norms.
Very interesting.
More than
for the elaboration.
For the elaboration phase.
Very interesting, and this also confirm another issues about the role of the technical and of the officials for the implementation of the law, because we normally people knows what the parliament debate and what the parliament approve, but nobody knows what happened after.
What happens after is very important.
When officials, when public servants ask to implement the law, and then we have a meeting, and nobody have information about this kind of meeting. So this point is very interesting. Ricardo, thank you very much.
I thank you.
Thank you very much for this very short interview, but very useful, very full of issues. And I really hope to meet you again in another occasion.
Whenever you want. Thank you very much, Professor
Thank you.
Petrillo.
Thank you very much.